All right, everyone, welcome back into another props video. Going to be breaking down the top prop bets for this Monday night showdown between the Detroit Lions and the Baltimore Ravens. Let's go ahead and get into it. So as always, to start off with the quick game preview for this game, it is worth calling out this game is projected to be a very high scoring game, 53.5 points or so. And with that, it is a game that's projected to be, I would say, not as close as I think most people would expect. I mean, I am surprised by this 4.5 point spread. If I was betting on it, I probably would look to bet on the Lions to cover here at like 5.5 on FanDuel. To me, that's a pretty darn good line. To me, it should be much more of a toss-up. I know the Lions didn't really look good in week one. To me, that was more of them shaking off the rust because they were a team that didn't play their starters much in the preseason. But obviously expect to be a high scoring game. So like for props betting purposes, we are going to be chasing more probably over bets in this game. And so I have already touched on some of the prop bets that I do like in this game already. The first one was Jared Goff to get over 260.5 passing yards. We see in that last game against Chicago Bears, he was able to really go off in that game. They were really able to do whatever they wanted in that game, which isn't saying much. We have seen that Bears defense look pretty poor now through 3 games as I'm recording this video. And then you look at the matchup that Goff gets with the Ravens. They've given up over 300 yards per game to opposing quarterbacks through 2 games thus far. And so I do think that the way to beat the Ravens will be through the passing game. And I was impressed with how sharp the passing weapons for the Detroit Lions looked last week. So I still like that bet. That's still going to be a bet I'm targeting. And then another bet that's kind of went up a little bit as the week has progressed, but I still like it, is going to be Zay Flowers to get over his receiving yards here, a 69.5. The Detroit Lions have given up a decent amount of production in the passing game as well. And again, if we are betting on this game to be a higher scoring game, especially a game in which the Baltimore Ravens are going to be winning by 4.5 points, 5.5 points or so, then this becomes an appealing line for me there as well for Zay Flowers to get over 69.5. Obviously has been able to get that over through 2 games thus far this season as well. And is worth calling out through 2 games they've given up. The Detroit Lions have given up 251 passing yards to opposing 351 passing yards to opposing receivers as well. And so it kind of points to Zay Flowers, who's been heavily involved in this passing game, to be able to get that over. So now let's go ahead and pull up the 9-to-5 PrizePicks optimizer and take a peek at some of the top prop bets that are being pulled in right now. And I will say right off the bat, I don't typically like betting on these bets like DeAndre Hopkins to get over 4 for his fantasy score, and also Justice Hill to get over his fantasy score of 5.5. They're both decent bets, but I don't like targeting players that are going to maybe play 20 to max of like 50% of the snaps. That's not something I particularly love doing. Now, don't get me wrong, DeAndre Hopkins has made some pretty impressive plays thus far, but that's kind of his role now, is kind of the money downs, if you will. That's the role he's in. So I don't necessarily want to bet on those two, but I will say Rashod Bateman at over 2.5 receptions is somewhat interesting. Mark Andrews as well to get over his fantasy score of 8.5 is a little bit interesting as well. Let's go ahead and talk about those two. So obviously, if Zay Flowers gets a good matchup, Rashod Bateman also gets a good matchup as well. Again, this is projected to be a higher scoring game. Okay, in the last game against the Cleveland Browns, it was kind of a weird game. The Browns play them better than really what the score shows us, but through 2 games, Rashod Bateman only 4 targets in both the games, which is a little bit concerning in regards to his role. But a matchup here with the Lions is going to be an easy matchup, their easiest matchup thus far. And again, 53.5 points. It's really not that hard to ask for another reception out of Rashod Bateman. So 53% likelihood via Vegas. I think we can be fine getting to that one. And then one of the strange developments thus far this season, again, for the Ravens, is that Mark Andrews has gotten off to a slow start thus far, guys. And so if we don't necessarily want to bet on his over fantasy score, I can see doing that. The Detroit Lions have actually been pretty solid against opposing tight ends as well, so probably would be forcing that. I love the fact that all the top prop bets that we were getting in this game are over bets, especially for the team that was projected to win. Like, that is typically something we want to be going pretty crazy with. And so I like the fact that we're seeing Hopkins, Hill, and Andrews for their fantasy score. I am struggling to bet those overs. Then we continue on, guys. We are going to see some of these fantasy score prop bets for the Detroit Lions. We are starting to lose our edge there when we look at some of those bets. And so let's go ahead and just take a peek at some of the other prop bets that we were getting in general, seeing if we can find any other edges there as well. And I will say just right off the bat, probably not in regards to kind of the rushing game for Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Derrick Henry in regards to the passing game. I don't really see it there with Lamar Jackson just because he's someone that obviously can be productive in multiple ways with his legs and throwing the football. Receiving yards wise, I already gave you guys Zay Flowers. I do think that that's a decent one there. I wouldn't be surprised to see Jameson Williams kind of have another good game in this game as well. He is someone that I prefer more for like longer receptions, longest reception, but those are also kind of fluky bets that I typically don't like to target as well. And so just going through it, I feel like a lot of the prop bets that we're getting are just solid lines. In regards to some of the anytime touchdown props, they are a little bit interesting. Obviously, Derrick Henry expected to score a touchdown, maybe two, again, with them being, 4, let's just say 5-point favorites and it being a high scoring game. But then every other player that we're getting is going to be a boosted payout in some capacity, minus Jahmyr Gibbs, where you could just bet on him to score a touchdown. I don't mind the idea of like betting on Jahmyr Gibbs to score a touchdown and or betting on David Montgomery to score a touchdown. I would rather just bet on one or the other, actually. But I don't mind the idea of attaching one of those boosted payouts. I guess with Gibbs, it's a standard payout, but I wouldn't mind the idea of attaching a David Montgomery boosted payout onto a slip or attaching a Jahmyr Gibbs bet to a payout to increase the payout. You could do 2 slips that way, betting on one of those 2 to score a touchdown. And then obviously if the rest of your bets hit, I don't hate that. Again, high scoring game, not a terrible idea to attack some of the players that are most likely to score a touchdown. Those 2 obviously would be right up there. And let's just say if Mark Andrews scores a touchdown, he's going to get his over fantasy score as well, most likely. So that'd be another way of attacking that. Passing touchdown wise, again, high scoring game. I already like Jared Goff to get over his passing yards, but if you want to get him at 1.5 passing touchdowns, not a terrible route to go. Again, high scoring game, not a blowout. Always a little bit of appealing there. Receptions wise, typically bets that I like. I would say the lines that we're getting are all pretty much correct. I don't see a big edge really in any of the bets that we were getting. Again, with Jameson Williams, it is a little bit shocking that he hasn't been off to a better start in terms of predictability. Week 1, 4 receptions. Then week 2, 2 receptions, but had a massive game. It's been a little bit weird there, but again, we don't have that many takeaways from last week against the Lions. A bet that I don't mind for Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be his rush and receiving yards line. Again, typically not a bet that I like to target just because it's a bet that when you combine the rush and receiving yards separately, and add those up, it's always higher because it's accounting for a little bit of randomness in one of them getting over. But I don't hate that because I do think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have a big game. It is a little bit of a guessing game. Will it be ground game? Will it be receiving game? So I don't hate that. It's not going to be a bet that I include in the bet of the day, but I did want to toss that one out to you guys there as well. And then with Justice Hill, I do want to call this out as well. If he does end up getting to over 30.5 rushing receiving yards, it's going to be tough to imagine him not being able to get that over fantasy score that we were being told to bet on him, 5.5, because he should be able to add a reception or 2 at the very least, right? And so again, I don't hate that. I'm not going to include that in the bet of the day though. All right, so looking at the bet of the day, we'll say I'm a little bit hesitant to get to Zay Flowers just because we did have him at a much lower line at the start of the week. Still think he's going to have a big game, but this could end up being the difference between a catch or not. It's went up even more since I did like the deep dive video as well, up by, I believe, 2 yards as well from that video. So this is a bet where I'm not going to be placing it too much more because I've already gotten my exposure to it and it's risen up. So if you're someone like that kind of took that advice, you could just go with Jared Goff and then Rashod Bateman then instead. Just do a 2-slip bet. Not going to be forcing any more bets. Called out some other ones that I don't mind. If you guys like those, obviously you can use those. If not, then you can always do the opposite of a bet as well. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. Should be a fun game to watch. I wish we had more prop bets to chase. We could just target a lot of over bets, betting on the game to be that high scoring game as well. But that's going to do it. Thank you guys for watching. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.